give us justification to believe in God, or?
I am just wondering what you're going to say to God when you get to heaven and you get
Okay,
this
so
little
I'm just going
speech
to ask
gives.
one more time. Do you have an argument or evidence that would give us reason to believe in God?
Of course I can.
Okay, what's
Of
the
course I
argument or
can.
evidence that would actually give us justification to believe that a God exists?
Everything is perfectly tuned. Look around. Everything seems perfectly calibrated.
How did you determine that?
Do you think the sunrise and the sunset just
Okay,
happens
so
as
I'm asking you direct questions and you're not giving me direct answers. I need, if I'm going to ask you a direct question, I need a direct answer back.
Very well. What is your question?
How did you determine that everything is finely tuned?
Have, have you ever climbed a mountain?
Okay, so I'm going to ask one more time, and if you're not able to answer a direct question with a direct answer, I'm just going to take it as a concession and move on. So you know the terms before I ask the question. You understand that not giving a direct answer is a concession. So how did you determine that the world, the earth is fine-tuned, or that reality is fine-tuned?
Because the Earth is in a position, if we were 1 inch closer to the sun, we would be burned.
No, the Earth gets millions and millions of miles closer to and further away from the sun over the course of every year. It's like 3 million miles we get closer and further away. So obviously it's not true that there's like some fine balance that whatever, like that's obviously nonsense. So you did actually try to answer that time. So I will give you one more chance. Is there any actual evidence that would lead us to believe that the universe is fine tuned in any way?
I would say the fact that Noah's Ark was actually found in Turkey.
Okay, so obviously you don't actually have any support for this fine tuning thing. I would have appreciated if you would have just been honest about that. Thanks for the conversation. I hope you have a good one. Maybe we'll talk another time. Hopefully not. We will move on. If you are in the guest box or thinking about joining, please make sure that you are 18 plus and that you have some kind of argument or evidence that would give us rational justification to believe in God. Thanks for the support, Mikey and Lem, and both sides. I do sincerely appreciate it. Thank you. We'll bring up Blind Dude. Hi, Blind Dude. Are you at least 18?
Yeah, I'm 54.
Okay. What God do you believe in?
I believe in a higher power.
Okay. I mean, like, is it like a mind that created and sustains the universe, like some kind of personal ultimate being?
Yeah, some kind of ultimate thing.
Okay.
Yes.
And what would you say is the best argument or evidence that would give us rational justification to believe in that?
Oh, that's a hard question. If you look at my profile picture, you can see that I might be handicap prone.
Okay, I'm not sure how that's relevant.
Do you get what I'm talking about?
No.
I don't want to get you. I don't want to get you a violation on TikTok.
Okay.
I don't know if I can say these words. So if you look at my profile picture, you can get what extra chromosome I might have.
Okay. So it sounds like just some. I have worked with people, you know, with disabilities and things like that. That used to be my profession. That is not how people with disabilities talk about having disabilities. Maybe that is actually a disabled person. I have no idea. That sounded like ableism to me, and I have no interest in dealing with ableism. So we'll move on. If you are in the guest box or thinking about joining, please make sure that you are 18 plus, and that you have some kind of argument or evidence that would provide rational justification to believe in God. JM, Darth Dawkins won't come back up here. He's way too scared to actually come up here. All right, so we'll go ahead and bring up Philly Sports.
Hello.
Hi, Philly. Are you at least 18?
Yes.
Cool. What God do you believe in?
The Bible, Abrahamic God.
Cool. I assume you mean the Christian Bible?
Yeah.
Okay. And what would you say is the best argument or evidence that would provide rational justification to believe in God?
Well, I would think, like, if you want to go with the fine tuning argument, I would say that would probably be the best one.
And why do you think that the fine-tuning argument is a good argument for God?
Because the improbable laws of the universe
The what?
and the improbable laws of the universe imply that existence of an intelligent designer.
How did you determine that the laws of the universe are improbable?
Why wouldn't it be?
Okay, so if I just say that the laws of the universe are the only way they could possibly be, so it doesn't need a creator, would that mean that
No.
we should believe in no gods? Because I just asserted that it could only be this way? Or would I actually have to support the position and show that they had to be this way?
So I mean,
Can you just
so
answer the
argument
question,
of-
please?
no.
Would I have to support it, or can I just assert that the laws of reality had to be this way?
For the laws to actually be that way.
Yeah, if I say that this is the only way they could have been,
Yeah.
so the probability of them being this way is 100%, therefore there doesn't need to be a creator to set them this way, is that a good argument? Can we now just conclude that there is no God? Or would I need to support that position?
If you go with a fine-tuned argument,
I don't think you understand the
precise
critique that I'm making.
improbable laws of the universe imply the
Do you-
existence of an intelligent designer.
Do you understand the critique that I'm giving you?
Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I mean,
Do you understand the critique that I'm making?
do you understand the critique I'm making?
Okay. I understand.
Wait,
I understand that actually having somebody push back against your argument in a way that you're not familiar with is scary. So I get that you're a little scared, and that your ego isn't letting you
I'm not
just be
scared.
honest. So let's just pretend that you weren't the one that gave the fine tuning argument, and we're just taking an objective view at it. Somebody is giving me a fine tuning argument, and I responded the way that you heard me respond a little bit ago. Can you give me some summation of what my response was?
No.
Okay. Why is it that you can't tell? Because I can tell you what your argument was. I actually wrote it down. You said that the improbable laws of the universe imply that there must have been an intelligent designer who created them that way. Yeah. So I can tell you what your position was.
What's wrong with that?
I can tell you what your position was. Why can't you tell me what my position was?
But I don't understand why you.
I can tell you what your position was. Why can't you tell me what my position was?
Okay, repeat your position.
Can you answer the question, please?
Can you repeat it, please?
As soon as you answer the question. Yep.
I don't remember.
Yeah, because you weren't paying attention and actually listening to what I said, right?
No.
Yeah, because you weren't actually
I got that
listening.
memory loss.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
Okay. What I'm saying is that your claim is that the laws of the universe were unlikely to be the way that they are. I asked you to support that, and you just repeated that they're unlikely. So I'm pointing out to you that if I just made a claim about the probability of the laws of the universe, and I just claimed that they had to be this way, and it was 100% likely that they would be this way, then we could say there doesn't need to be a God because it could only have ever been this way. But obviously, I would have to actually support that position, just like you have to support your position in order for your argument to work.
The physics to God. There's one where I got this. The physics to God, the fine-tuned argument for God and modern physics.
Okay, are you using like ChatGPT or Grok or something now?
No, well, yeah, I'm telling you where I found this, the physics to God.
Well, if I wanted to argue with AI, I would just go on one of those AI sites and argue with the AI. Do you actually have some kind of argument? No, I'm not asking you where you got it. I didn't ask you where you got the argument. I asked you, how did you determine, personally, how did you go about determining that it was improbable for the laws of the universe to be the way that they are?
Because I studied and I found that answer.
And what did you study to find that answer?
I just said the physics to God. You understand?
Yes, fantastic. What physics did you study?
Fantastic. Oh my gosh. It's called the physics to God.
And what did you learn from that?
the mystery of
Okay, so I'm asking you a direct question and you're giving indirect answers. I want a direct answer to the question that I'm asking you. If you're not able to provide a direct answer, then I'm just going to consider it a concession and I'm going to move on. So what I'm asking you, okay, so do you understand the question that I'm asking then?
I just said it's from the physics to God, which is the mystery.
That's irrelevant. What's the question that I asked you?
Oh my gosh.
What's the question you're supposed to be answering?
I guess we can't have a civil conversation.
Okay, fantastic. I agree. Well, anyone who could do a Google search must be right. All right. If you are in the guest box or thinking about joining, please make sure that you are 18 plus and that you have some kind of argument or evidence that would provide rational justification for your God belief. And we'll move on to the next person. I have no idea how to pronounce your name. Something Medrano?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what would you? How old are you?
19.
Okay. And what God do you believe in?
I'm Christian, so I'd say I would believe in the Bible.
Fantastic. And what would you say is the best argument or evidence that would provide rational justification to believe that God exists?
So me personally, off my beliefs, I'm not a very good expert. I'm not I'm not very good into it with the religions and stuff, but I'm Christian. I know that for a fact, but I'm not the best at it. So I'm going to just say to the best of my knowledge. But me personally, I feel like just the way, for me, it's just the way that other types of, organizations, for example, like the Jews and the LGBTQ community that's so hurt and so disgusted of one religion. So I would believe that for them to be so offended of that one belief, it makes me feel like, oh, there's something to do with that. Like there's not something they like about that. And it's
the reason that they don't like it is because of how bad it is and how harmful it is.
But how? Give me a reason how it would be harmful. Because as a Christian, it's one of the things to accept everyone for who there is.
No, that's not what that may be your type of Christianity, but there are a lot of Christians who don't just accept everyone the way that they are. There are people. You can give a no true Scotsman and say only Christians who fit this definition are really Christians. The problem is that's not the way things work in the real world. And there are lots and lots of people, like for example, people in the LGBTQ community who have been literally disowned by their families, kicked out of their homes just for trying to be true to who they know they are. And so if it's possible, if it's true that people who are Christian have used their Christianity to harm people, whether it be people of other religion or people of the LGBTQ community or people of different, white Christians using their beliefs against non-white people, those kinds of things, then there is good reason for people to be upset that Christian churches support that kind of thing, that the Bible is used to support slavery, that Christian people are like turning their children away and making them live on the streets. There are good reasons to be mad at Christianity. Now, I understand that you're saying that you don't think Christians should be that way. Fine. But none of this honestly is even the point here. All I'm concerned with is why should we believe that a God exists? Other people being mad at Christians or Christianity because there are a lot of shitty Christians out there is not a reason to believe in God.
You're absolutely right.
So is there a good reason why we should believe in God?
I feel like there is. I mean, for me personally, it's like if you believe in the devil, if you're a satanic person, if you believe in any of that, consider why though. If there's bad, why wouldn't there be good? Explain to me that.
Yeah, obviously, some people do you believe the devil exists?
Yes, I do. 100%.
Yeah, fantastic. And the other people who believe the devil exists are also people like you. The only people who actually believe the devil exists are Christians. And now there are people who believe the devil exists,
so
and
like
they
Bala and stuff like that. You believe,
like what?
You believe that exists? The Bala, that God.
The what?
Believe that exists? Bala?
Are you talking about Baal?
Baal, yeah. You don't believe he exists. You don't.
No, I don't believe any gods exist.
None of those.
No, there are no such thing. There's no such thing as gods or demons or angels or ghosts.
I respect I respect that. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm saying is the people who believe in that are people believing in that stuff doesn't make it true. So what I'm asking is why should we think it's true that a God exists? That's what I'm interested in.
There isn't a way I can convince you. You know, there
Okay,
isn't
fantastic. I agree that there isn't a good argument. I'm glad that you can see that as well. Thanks for your time, and I hope you have a good one. I don't know what to say at that point. Hey, what's with all the tapping? I need you guys to cut it out. On those taps. Bala is the child of Eunice, our one true Lord and Savior. All right. We will bring up our next guest. Please make sure if you're in the guest box or thinking about joining that you are 18 plus and that you have some kind of argument or evidence that would give us rational justification to believe in a God. I assume this is Beck. Are you at least 18? Hello?
Hey, how are you?
Are you at least 18?
Can you hear me?
I can. Are you at least 18?
Yes, sir, I am.
Cool. What God do you believe in?
The God of the Bible, the Abrahamic Bible.
Okay, I assume you mean the Christian Bible?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. What would you say is the best argument or evidence that would give us rational justification to believe in God?
I've taken a couple of classes on this, but I'm no expert. I would say I have three main ones that I think complexity. The complexity.
Well,
of
hold on one
creation.
sec. We can only talk about one at a time. If we can get through one, then we can try to go on to the other ones, but only one at a time, please.
All right, bet. I think historical and I'm gonna say this is one, but like historical eyewitness accounts, because you can
Eyewitness
argue
accounts of
that-
what?
Of Jesus Christ.
Okay, where can I find an eyewitness account of Jesus Christ's life?
Well, there's 30 to 40 independent ancient texts of it.
Yep, so give me one place that I can look to find an eyewitness account of something from Jesus' life or death.
What?
Are you listening to something else? Hello?
Sorry, you're cutting out. What'd you say? Sorry.
I'm asking you where I can look to find at least even just one eyewitness account from Jesus' life.
Yes. 1 second. You don't mind if I look this up? I know there's 30 to 40, but you don't mind if I look this up?
I mean, I don't understand why you would come up here saying that your evidence is eyewitness accounts, but then you don't even know what the eyewitness accounts are. If you don't actually have this evidence, then we probably should move on to a different argument, right?
Well, the reason why I'm saying this isn't because I have to have the exact evidence. I'm saying the reason why I brought this up is because another person in history around the exact same time, Julius Caesar, which, do you believe that he existed?
I don't understand how this gets us to any of this. Like, first off, we don't have any eyewitness accounts of Jesus. So I don't really care to waste time on you looking it up and finding that you can't find any either, because I already know that they don't exist. Secondly, even if we had eyewitness accounts from Jesus's life and they made a bunch of claims about things that he supposedly said and did, that wouldn't give us any reason to believe that any of his claims about being God are true. We would have no reason to think that that's actually accurate. Even if we had direct eyewitness claims of him resurrecting from the dead, that wouldn't give us any reason to think that he actually existed, because we could also point to tons of other historical accounts of people being resurrected from the dead by other gods, by the Greek gods, for example. Well, like we can I was just talking earlier about what the fuck is his name? Aristeas, who was supposedly resurrected by the Greek gods, and he said he spent 200 years traveling with Apollo as a raven, and then he came back so he died, he resurrected the same day, and then he disappeared for 240 years and then came back and said he had been a raven with Apollo the whole time. So does that mean that we should believe in the Greek gods?
Because
Does that mean that we should believe in the Greek gods?
you just told me a story, but
Yeah, and does that story mean that we should believe in the Greek gods?
because one person wrote about that because they
Does that story mean that we should believe in the Greek gods? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, fantastic. So just having a story about somebody resurrecting doesn't mean that the rest of the details of that story are true, right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So just the fact that we have a story about Jesus resurrecting doesn't tell us that Jesus actually resurrected, and it certainly doesn't tell us whether or not the God he claims resurrected him actually did it, right?
Oh, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember saying that. I mean, I do believe that Jesus resurrected from the dead, but
I understand.
I didn't say that in my. I didn't bring that up in my point of the historical eyewitnesses of Jesus.
Right.
I
What I'm
just said,
saying is that it doesn't matter what things that you prove, what eyewitness things you could prove, whether it be some of the miracles or the resurrection or anything else. It doesn't matter, even if we had eyewitness accounts, which again, we don't. That's an important point here. We do not have eyewitness accounts. But even if we did, it wouldn't matter because what's written in an eyewitness account doesn't mean, like, just something being written in an eyewitness account doesn't guarantee that the thing written about actually happened. So what I'm interested in is why should we actually think that God exists? Obviously, having eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life doesn't give us any reason to believe God exists. So is there a reason we should believe God exists?
well, what do you think happens? Like, what happens when you die?
So do you have any argument or evidence, or are you just trying to
Yes,
pivot
do.
away?
I have a really dumb argument, but
Well, I have figured that out, yeah. What is the actual argument or evidence that
No.
would give us reason to believe in God?
okay, I have an argument. And if I'm playing a game and I know I'm gonna lose, either way if I play this game, either way I'm gonna lose. And the person in charge of the game says, if you win or lose this game, you're gonna die. I'm gonna kill you. Nothing's gonna happen after. You're like, great. Nobody cares about what happens.
Okay, so you're just going to give some kind of Pascal's wager, and I fucking hate Pascal's wager. So why don't you actually answer the question of whether there's actual evidence or some kind of argument that would get us to God instead of this, like, flailing at, well, what if maybe God did exist and then you died and then maybe you would be sad you didn't believe in it? Well, I don't care about that. If I don't have a reason to believe in it, I can't believe in it. So is there a reason to believe in it other than this, like, stupid Pascal's wager nonsense?
Oh, I was just trying to get through a point without you interrupting or arguing, but
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm not going to let you just go on this whole, rant about Pascal's wager when I already know what the argument is. Everyone else here already knows what that argument is. And we also already know that it doesn't get us anywhere near believing in a God. So since that's not going to actually do the thing that we're supposed to be doing here, do you have anything that you can say that would get us to believing in a God?
what about like the complexity of creation? How complex even a leaf is?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You just think that just blew up in thin air?
Okay. So is it your position that if something is complex, then it must have been created by an intelligent designer?
Yes.
Okay. And wouldn't you say that God's mind is extremely complex to be powerful enough and to be able to know everything and to be able to do something like creating a universe?
Outside of our comprehension of complex, though.
Is it possible for, like, what's a good example here? Is it possible, let's say, for a leaf to program a game on a computer?
No.
Or do you need something more complex, like a mind, to be able to work the computer and input enough information to program a game?
Yes.
Okay, and you would say that the mind has to be pretty complex to be able to make something complex, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. So then we would agree that if God created the universe, then God must be very complex. And you said that if something is complex, then it must have an intelligent creator. So that tells us that the God you believe in must have an intelligent creator. So that's the God that I'm interested in talking about. But actually, if we think about that God for a second, we'll realize that it must also have been complex in order to be able to create your God. So there must be another God behind it. And then if we think about that God, oh my God, it also must be really complex. And so that we're going to find is that now we have an infinite regress of gods creating gods, all because of your principle that something being complex must mean it was created. So now you have two options in this dialectic. You can either hold on to your position that complexity implies a creator, which would then mean that you also have to agree that there are infinite gods behind God that made him, or you can get rid of that stupid argument that says that complexity requires a designer, and then you don't have to deal with infinite gods creating your God.
Do you think that's something complex, like a leaf? I'm assuming you don't believe that a leaf could program a computer program, like an AI.
So are you just not willing to engage with the point that I made?
Well, I'm gonna circle around.
Nope, we're not doing circles. You're either directly engaging or you're conceding.
Well, I'm trying to engage. But
Okay, fantastic. So directly engage with what I said.
Oh, thank you for cutting me off again. This isn't an argument. I'm trying to have a conversation, but if you're trying to argue, then you could just cut this off.
Okay,
But
so
you're not telling me. You're not telling me anything you believe. You're just like, oh, that can't happen because I don't believe that can happen.
Yeah, because whether or not your position is accurate has nothing to do with what I believe.
Well,
My beliefs
then
don't
our
enter into
positions
it.
Are the same if you are just saying this, because then
Your position is that complexity, anything being complex, implies that that thing had a creator. If that's true, and it's true that God is complex, which the God you believe in would have to be complex, then that means your God has to have a creator, and then that just goes infinitely. Each God that we think about must be complex enough to also require a creator, and so what you've done is you've created an infinite regress of gods. I don't think that you actually believe in an infinite regress of gods, and the only way that you can get that out, that entailment out of your worldview, is to get rid of this stupid principle that complexity requires a creator. So it's your call whether or not you want to hold on to that.
I do.
Okay, fantastic. So then you have to deal with the fact that here's the argument that I'm going to give. I'm going to say that if God exists, God is the ultimate being. You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. If God exists, God is an ultimate being. And by ultimate being, what we mean is that everything else in reality relies on him, right?
Yeah, under him, yes.
Fantastic. So here's what we do. We're going to say if God exists, God is an ultimate being. If God was created, God is not an ultimate being. If something is complex, it must have been created. Oops, I didn't put a number there. How are we going to know what we're talking about if there's no number there? If something is complex, it must have been created. God is complex. So then our conclusion here is going to be God was created. And since we know that if God was created, he's not an ultimate being, but if he exists, then he is an ultimate being. Our second conclusion is going to be God does not exist. So what you can do now is reject 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Well, 3 and 4, God was created. From your points, if something is plus, it must have been created, or if God was created, God is not an ultimate being. Well, I don't have any proof of God being created because in the Bible, which I believe in, there's no writing about God before, just as he is.
Well, the problem
I'm not
is
going to say something that I don't know.
the problem is that if you don't reject number 3 here, I don't know what else you're going to reject. Like which you have, like, do you agree that logic is reliable?
In the world we live in now, I think people say logic and they say unlogical stuff. So.
Well, I'm talking about actual logic. If we actually use logic correctly, like actual, like, valid inference rules, do you think that that is reliable?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I do too. And as far as I can tell, this is a valid inference that's happening right here. So unless you can point to somewhere that this inference is invalid, the only other option is to either reject a premise or accept the conclusions.
So your conclusion is God was created or God doesn't exist?
No, both. We can conclude from 3 and 4 that God was created, and we can conclude from 1, 2, and the first conclusion that God does not exist. If you want me to make this a little bit cleaner, I could do it this way. We could do it like we could say if, oh, you know what? I'm just going to do this. So we'll say that we call that 1, and then we'll call 2 this one, and then so we'll have the first conclusion is going to be God was created, so that's just modus ponens from 1 and 2, and then 3 is going to be we'll say this is 3, and then 4 we'll actually have this one right here, and then so then our second conclusion is going to be God does not exist. This is maybe a little bit cleaner than the way that I wrote it out the first time. So here's the thing. In order to get out of the conclusion God was created, you have to reject one or two. If you don't reject one or two, then you have to accept that God was created. And then in order to get out of the conclusion God does not exist, you would have to accept 3 or 4. I don't think that you want to say that God was created. So that means that you have to reject 1 or 2. Like I said, so your options are to either try to point to where my inference is wrong, which I don't think you'll be able to do because this first part is what modus ponens, and the second part is just like, what would we call this? We say like if A, then B, if C, then not B. We already have A, so therefore, if A, then B, right? We already know A is true, so we know that B must be true. But if God exists, then B is not true, so therefore God does not exist. So this is a valid inference rule. I don't see any, again, you can point it out if you think that there's something wrong with this logic that the inference doesn't follow, but as far as I can tell, it does. So your job here is to either accept the conclusions and the conclusion that God does not exist, or reject 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Okay, so obviously you know this. I don't believe that God does not exist because.
Okay, fantastic. So 1, 2, 3, or 4.
1 point, if something is complex, it has had to been created. And you said that you don't think I would say God was created. First of all, if something is complex, it must have been created. The universe is complex, it must have been created.
Yeah, that's your position, and I'm showing how that leads you to the conclusion that God doesn't exist.
Okay, yes, exactly. So, and then you said God is complex. We talked about that. We both agreed on that.
Right. I think the only reasonable thing that you can reject in this argument is premise number 1. I don't think that you have a way out of this argument besides rejecting premise number 1. And that's why I'm presenting this argument to you, because I think that you don't want to hold that position that something being complex means it was created, because if you hold that position, then you have to also hold the position that God does not exist. So if you want to get out of the position God doesn't exist, you have to get rid of the highlighted position. So it's up to you.
As humbly as I'm saying this humbly too, like, I don't know, because there's nothing in my faith about what God was before he created the world, other than I am. That's what he said.
Again,
he said, I am.
Again, okay, so either you reject number 1 or you agree that God doesn't exist. Which of those do you want to do?
But I'm telling you.
Okay, those are your 2 options. I'm not going to keep going around in circles here. I tried to be nice and pretend that you had more options just to be courteous to you. But the reality is, the only thing that you can reasonably reject here, as far as I can tell, is number 1. I guess you could try to reject number 2, but I don't think that that'll go very well for you. I don't think that it makes any sense to reject number 3, and certainly you don't want to reject number 4. So I think your only option here is your only 2 options that you have here are to either reject number 1 or accept that God does not exist. If you can see a different option, then please, by all means, tell me. So I need you to do one of those things right now. So the next thing that you say has to be one of those 3 things: either rejecting premise 1, accepting God doesn't exist, or telling me the other problem with the syllogism.
The other problem with this syllogism is you don't understand what the complex of God is.
No, well, when you're giving me a problem with the syllogism, you have to reject a premise or reject the inference rule. So those are your 3 options. You either reject premise 1, you accept that God doesn't exist, or you tell me the problem with the inference rule.
Your problem with the inference rule is you don't understand who God
fantastic.
is.
Okay, cool. So you have nothing. I tried really hard. I'm genuinely trying to be more patient. Everybody yells at me for being a dick and cutting people off and kicking people too quickly. But that's the conversations. Like, I wish I would have ended that conversation so long ago, because it obviously was never going anywhere. Yes, Lupine. As far as I can tell, it was just rejecting logic. And that's what I'm going to put in my notes. Rejected logic. Okay. So if you are 18 plus and have some kind of argument or evidence that would provide justification for your God belief, please feel free to join the guest queue. If you are in the queue, make sure that you fit those qualifications. So we'll move on to the next guest. Hi, Risse. Are you at least 18?
Yes, mate, I am.
And what God do you believe in?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. What God do you believe in?
Muslim, so.
Okay. All right, I'm going to count to 3, and I'll ask you to say 4. 1, 2, 3.
4.
Okay. That's a really, really long delay. If you're able to come back with a better connection, I would be happy to talk to you, but there's just no way to have a conversation with that long of a delay. Give me one quick second here. Let me check this. Okay. Oh, that's why, because I'm stupid. You guys, I don't know if you realize this, but I'm a dum-dum. Oh my God. As I say that, I do something dumb. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm stupid. It's my fault. It's always my fault. Okay. High Pushback Ministries. Are you at least 18?
Yeah,
Okay. And what God do you believe in?
the Christian God.
Cool. Fantastic. And what would you say is the best argument or evidence that would give us rational justification to believe in the Christian God?
Well, I was an atheist for a long time, then kind of an agnostic, and what brought me to the Christian God was the teleological argument. So I was following earlier when you did your syllogism, and I would say that there's a qualifier that you missed from the Christian worldview, is that if something's complex, it means that it was created, but that I would say that applies only in the natural world. So I would say
so that's just special
physical
pleading?
universe.
So either that's special pleading, or you can give me some kind of
Because
inference.
we can only observe the physical universe.
Well,
So
if you're-
dealing with a metaphysical concept, which God is a metaphysical concept, that would nullify the syllogism.
No. What that does is just show that there's a major problem with your metaphysics here, because what you're saying is you want to be able to draw this like I don't know the right way to put this. You're basically trying to, well, yeah, I mean, you're just special pleading, right? You're just saying that everything fits. This is a property or a principle that applies to everything except this one thing, because I don't want it to apply to that. So you would have to actually give a reason why it shouldn't apply.
Right. So the problem with that is that you're special pleading when you use the laws of logic or when you verify things like time.
So are you able to
or
give the inference for why it shouldn't apply to God?
gravity. These are metaphysical concepts.
Okay, so I'm asking you a direct question. If you're not able to provide direct answers, then we can't have a productive conversation. Are you able to provide the inference for why this principle of complexity needing a creator, why it doesn't apply to God?
Yes, because if you look at something like DNA, you see a code.
That's not an answer to my question.
We don't see that coming from anything but a mind.
That's not an answer to the question?
In the natural world.
That's not an answer to the question. Do you understand the question you're supposed to be answering?
Yes, you're asking me if we see something complex in this world that's repeatable, like information
Nope.
in DNA.
This doesn't sound anything like the question that I asked you.
Restate the question, please.
What is the inference that would lead us to the conclusion that the principle that complexity requires a creator does not apply to God?
Correct. Yes, the inference is that we only see repeatable information come from a mind in any circumstance.
Right. And so if there's that level of complex information present in God for him to be able to be a creator of the universe, then that principle would apply to him and he must have a creator as well. So what you need to do is provide the inference for why we shouldn't think that's the case.
You're affirming the consequent. We're dealing with a metaphysical concept.
How am I affirming the consequent? What did I do to affirm the consequent?
Because you're saying that if something is complex, and that implies that it was created, and I'm saying that applies in the natural world. But what we're doing is we're going to metaphysics. And
no, how did I affirm the consequent? I need you to give me the actual affirmation of the consequent.
Because you're applying the syllogism.
What was the consequent that I affirmed?
If something is complex, it implies that it was created. Okay, you are applying that from a physical standpoint, because we can only.
Do you know what affirming the consequent is?
To a metaphysical.
Do you know what affirming the consequent is?
Yes, you're restating.
Okay, can you
the
just?
claim.
No,
You're
that's not
restating.
affirming the consequent. Nope.
Okay, well, that's what you're doing. You're restating your claim.
Okay, so you're
restating
saying
your
that I
claim.
didn't affirm the consequent. I did some other thing.
Well, okay, so that would.
Are you agreeing that I did not affirm the consequent and I instead did some other thing?
Well, maybe I'm mistaken about what.
Yeah, I'm just asking you to confirm, did I affirm the consequent, yes or no?
As far as what I was under the impression of what affirming the consequent means, yes, you affirm the consequent. Maybe
Okay, I will. Yeah, that's fine. I can explain to you what affirming the consequent is. So if we had a syllogism that was like, if A, then B, and then we said B, and then we concluded A, that would be affirming the consequent, right? You're saying that if A is B, then B must. If A is true, then B must be true. We know B is true, therefore A is true. That's affirming the consequent. I did not do that.
You did.
How did? Well, okay. What's the A and B here that I did?
Okay, if something is complex.
So A is something is complex. Something
Yeah,
is
something
complex. Okay, so A is something is complex. Oops, something is complex. What's B?
Then it was created.
Then it was created is B. So it was created. When did I do this? When did I give this argument? Because as far as I know, I never gave this argument. So I need you to tell me when I gave this argument.
You said if God exists and he's complex.
Okay.
Then he's created. Then
No, what I said was if, I mean, this isn't actually what I said, but what I said is closer to if God exists, he is complex. And then the principle that you and the previous guest are using is that if something is complex, then it was created. And then if we said God exists, we would now get the conclusion God was created. This is not affirming the consequent. This is just a valid inference rule. Because the way this one works is if A, then B, 2, if B, then C, and then 3 is A, and so the conclusion is C. So this is not affirming the consequent. This is just basically modus ponens with an extra step.
Right, and I'm not a Philbro.
Okay, well, I'm not a Philbro either, but if you're going to accuse me of something, you need to be able to show that I actually did it, and I think that we're seeing that I didn't actually do the thing you accuse me of.
No, but you are just restating the claim. But
No, I'm not restating the claim.
It's the law of non-contradiction because.
What is the contradiction?
Because.
What is the contradiction?
It has to be.
What is the contradiction?
It's not in the.
Just tell me the contradiction.
It's not in the same.
Just tell me the contradiction.
God is a metaphysical.
I'm asking you a direct question. You're giving an indirect answer. That's a problem. So when I ask you a direct question, you need to give a direct answer. What is the contradiction that I'm affirming?
Okay, if something is complex, it was created.
No, that's not a contradiction. So I'm going to ask you one more time, and you can either give a direct answer by telling me the contradiction, or you can concede that I didn't affirm a contradiction. So those are your two options. And if you can't answer this direct question, I'm taking it as a concession. So which contradiction did I affirm?
Calm down, calm down.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for the concession. I appreciate it. Okay. I don't think that got us anywhere. So folks, I do go in order that people requested. So I am not going to just bring people up because they're begging in the chat, right? So we will bring up, it looks like Aura, then Tactadel. Make sure, though, if you're in the guest queue that you are at least 18 and that you have some kind of God belief that you can support with an argument or evidence. Hi, Aura Pro Nobles. Are you at least 18 or Nobis? I can't tell.
Yes, I am. I'm 33.
Okay, I'm not going to do baby crying in the background. Is there a way to go to a different room, or is that going to happen? Okay, fair enough. That was a long time to wait. Maybe I'm an evil person, but I'm not really a fan of babies. Not my thing. I know there are people that like kids, but I'm good. All right, we'll go to Tactadel. Assuming that they can. Okay, hi Tactadel Gaming.
Hello.
Are you at least 18?
Yes, yes.
Cool.
My English is not that good, but I can speak.
Hey, as long as we're both trying to be honest and doing our best, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah. Okay, bro.
Fantastic. What God do you believe in?
we've been discussing that.
So what God do you believe in?
If yes, I'm God believer. Yes.
Yeah, which God?
Can I? One God. There is one God
Yep.
of all humanity.
Yeah, which is the God that you believe in?
The God who created everything.
Okay, so I'm only going to ask the question one more time. I can tell that this isn't a language barrier.
Okay,
you
but
know the
my
question that I'm
proposition,
asking.
You even hear it.
I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you one more time. If you can't give a direct answer to a direct question, then you're not worth talking to. So,
But
what
this
God
is
do you
not
believe in?
conference, dude. We are discussing. Don't limit my.
Okay,
my
so
opinion.
obviously you can't answer
Don't-
direct questions, so there's no reason to talk to you. It's a very simple question. Just say what God you believe in. That's all you got to do. I will work around a language barrier as long as it's feasible, right? Like as long as it's workable. I will work around a language barrier. I'll do my best to explain things in whatever way makes sense, but I'm not going to put up with people who can't answer direct questions. I just have no patience for it. Hi, Dinite. Are you at least 18?
Yes, I'm 23. And I believe in Allah.
Fantastic. Okay. And what would you say is the best argument or evidence that would give us rational justification to believe in a God?
Okay. Give me a bit as well. My English sometimes is a bit bad, but I'm gonna read out the premise to you. I read it out. I wrote it out.
Smart idea.
So-
Let's go.
Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. So, premise 1. Let me explain. The first cause part. Okay, is this what you're trying to say? Okay, so premise 1, anything that is expanding, whether it be multiverse, cycle, or this Earth, has a beginning. I can also give you the paper. So
Do you mean a beginning to its existence?
Yeah. So.
Well, hold on.
Math.
Hold on. I just need to clarify with this. You're saying that if something is expanding and we trace its expansion back, then when it started expanding is when it started existing. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So
okay. So the problem. Hold on. I'm just trying to clarify, and then because now I can tell you why I have an issue with this. So the issue that I have here is that I've seen balloons expand before, but I know that when they started expanding had nothing to do with when they started existing. So I don't know why I should accept this argument that something expanding, if that we trace it back to when the expansion start, must have also been when it began existing. So I need you to tell me, with a balloon as the analogy, why should I think that if a balloon is currently being blown up, why should I think that it started existing when it started being blown up?
Okay, so the object I'm talking about right now.
Nope, you're answering with the balloon because that's the analogy we're using.
You didn't let me finish.
Yeah, I didn't because you're trying to run away from. Hold on, Dinite. Dinite.
Clarify.
Hold on.
Okay.
I'm giving you a specific analogy, and I'm asking you to engage with it. If you're good faith, you can engage with an analogy.
Okay, that's fine, and then we can go back to it. It's fine. Okay.
Okay.
What's the analogy? Give it to me.
So your premise here is that anything that's expanding, when it began expanding, is also when it began existing. I know of balloons that expand that don't begin existing when they begin expanding. They actually existed prior to the beginning of the expansion. So why and what am I wrong about? Why should I think that if a balloon is being blown up, that it started existing when it began being blown up?
So can grant you that when a balloon is being blown up is when it started existing, but
no, it didn't start existing then. Why should I think that that's when it started existing?
I mean, you're blowing the balloon up.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, but
you're filling it with air.
So
at that moment it's expanding.
Yeah, that it's expanding. But okay, so let's say that I go to a store and I buy a bag, like a bag full of 100 balloons, right? I got 100 balloons in this bag. None of them are inflated. I bring them home and I throw them in a drawer. And then 2 months later, I pull one out at a party. I bring it to a party. And then at the party, I start blowing it up and it expands. Why should I think that it only started existing when I was at the party blowing it up? Why shouldn't I think that that balloon existed the whole time prior, when I bought it, when I had it in my drawer, when I was traveling to the party with it? Why shouldn't I think that that balloon existed during all those times?
So it did exist during all those
Okay,
times.
so
It's just
fantastic. So what you're saying then is now you're rejecting your own premise, right?
you blew. So you didn't hear my premise. I literally told you. I said yes to the wrong thing, and I would like to clarify what I was saying. So could I read out my first premise?
Okay, re-give me premise 1.
Okay, so there's a paper published in 2003. It's called the BGV theorem. It proves that proven in anything that expands, whether it is our universe, a cycle, or a multiverse, must have a beginning, no escape. Even if you invent 100 universes, the whole chain still have to have a start. That's premise 1.
So here's the thing. So the BGV is frequently misunderstood, does not definitively prove the universe had an absolute beginning. Theorem dictates a geodesic boundary where our models run out of time and paths, but it doesn't require nothing before it, so the universe could have existed prior. It assumes classical expansion, which we haven't confirmed to be true. And the authors of this article, have actually specifically come out and explicitly said that this theorem does not rule out past eternal models. So the people who made this paper that you're referring to are saying that, in fact, their theorem could be true and the past could be eternal. So it turns out that this theorem is not a good reason why we should believe in a God, because it doesn't tell us that there's a beginning of the universe. So do you have a different argument?
Okay, so you made a couple of points. I would like to dialogue with you because sometimes I forget. But so you said that it doesn't prove that there's no expansion yet.
That's what the authors of the paper. No, I didn't say it doesn't prove there's no expansion. Or I'm sorry, I didn't say that it proves there's no expansion. I said it doesn't prove that there was a beginning.
But do you believe that there is expansion happening within this world?
I do believe that there's expansion happening in the universe, and that theorem does not tell us that when the expansion began is when the universe began. The authors of the paper you're citing have explicitly said that is not what the theorem shows. It does not tell us that there was a beginning or that the past was finite. So knowing that this doesn't have anything to do with the universe beginning, why should we believe in God?
Is the earth finite?
What does that have to do with what I said?
Because it has a lot to do with it. Because
How?
the finite, because if the earth is finite and it's dependent, that means that behind it, I know you've heard the structural complexity talk, which is why I didn't want to go to that, and I've read out a whole premise for you and everything. But basically, yeah. That was, but I can also give you another. I can give you if you don't accept that, if you're refuting that, I can go to the second law of the thermodynamics, where it states energy runs out. If the universe had been here forever, all energy would be gone. Everything.
That's not what the second law of thermodynamics says.
Okay, I can read out. I wrote up a whole paper on thermodynamics. I can read out all the laws for you.
The total entropy of an isolated system can never decrease over time and is constant only if all processes are reversible. So, do we have any evidence suggesting that the universe is a closed system? An isolated system?
So, over here, I was talking about energy.
Do we have any reason to believe that the universe is an isolated system?
No, that's
okay. Fantastic. And since the second law of thermodynamics only applies to isolated systems, we can't apply it to the universe, right?
The second law of thermodynamics states what?
Yep, it only applies to isolated systems.
Entropy.
Yep, it only applies to isolated systems. And we both agree that we don't know whether the universe is an isolated system, so that means that we can't apply the second law of thermodynamics to the universe, right?
Not really, because
hold on. Well, I'll go ahead and I'll make this easy for you here. We'll bring this up here. So, one, the second law of thermodynamics only applies to isolated systems. Two, we don't know if the universe is an isolated system. Conclusion, we don't know if the second law of thermodynamics applies to the universe. Which premise do you disagree with?
Okay, so the second law of thermodynamics only applies to isolated system. We don't know if the universe is an isolated system. We don't know if the second law of the universe that thermodynamic applies to. Okay, we don't know if the universe is an isolate. We don't know if second one.
So you think that we do know that the universe is an isolated system?
I said we don't know. So I'm just looking at it right now. Just give me a tiny bit. I should have I have it all written up. So I don't know if you have the time where you want to dialogue with me and we can go through this. But yeah. So time, space, matter, energy all began together at the start. Whatever caused them cannot be made of matter, cannot be inside time. Yada yada yada.
Maybe a better way to say it is, if the second law of thermodynamics is true, then it only applies to...
Okay, could you write my premise up on your thingy, and then we can go through it, and you can refute and tell me exactly where I'm wrong, and then I can also go back and,
Okay, what's the first premise?
So the first premise is the BGV theorem, proven in 2003. Anything that expands, whether it is our universe, a cycle, or a multiverse, anything that expands, whether it is our universe.
I don't need to type all that. Anything that expands.
Must have a beginning, no escape, even if you invent 1,000.
Okay, well, this isn't what the BGV theorem says, so, I mean, if you want to give the rest of the premises, you can, but this is definitely going to be the problem. What's the second premise?
Okay. The second premise is physics, the second law. Energy runs out. If the universe had been here forever, all energy would be gone.
If the universe had been here forever, the universe would have reached heat death due to the second law of thermodynamics. This one's not right either. What?
You're confusing me.
Okay, so reaching heat death is just energy running out. Okay, so if it would... I'm just trying to say this in a... Okay, if the universe would have run out of energy. That's like a really bad way to say it, and I was trying to make it better for you, but whatever.
Okay, and then the third one is logic. You can't count 1, 2, 3 forever backwards to get to today. So if the past was infinite, today would never arrive.
Okay, so okay, what's after that?
So conclusion is that time, space, matter, energy all began together at the start. Whatever caused them cannot be made of matter, cannot be inside time, and cannot be limited.
Okay.
Therefore causes outside time.
Okay, so here's the biggest... Actually, the biggest problem isn't even any of the premises. The biggest problem here is that this doesn't follow an inference rule. So let's say that we tried to put this into what we would call a logical language to try to understand this. We would say anything that expands must have a beginning. We'll call that E, right? So anytime we see that sentence, we'll call it E. And then 2, if the universe was past infinite, it would have run out of energy. And we'll call that T for the second law of thermodynamics. Okay, so that's premise 2. 3, can't count forever backwards. We're going to say that's C for you can't count. And then the conclusion is going to be something else entirely, all began together, so that's going to be B. Now, the way that a normal inference rule works, right? So if I was going to give you a premise, or a syllogism, let's say I was going to give you a modus ponens syllogism, right? That would be something like if A, then B, right? And then we would say A, right? And so then the conclusion would be B, right? And so what you notice is that the premises actually show how we get to the conclusion. Your premises up here have nothing to do with the conclusion. Now, I know that in your mind, they're all connected to each other, but it's actually not. Oh yeah. Pensive has a good point. So this is basically we could say this is not C, and that's fine. So oh, I don't like that at all. Not you. So this is your syllogism versus this is like a type of syllogism that I would give. Or I could show you one of my favorite arguments against God. I'll show you the inference rule for that one. It's much, much more complex, but you'll see. So this is the inference rule for something that I really like, an argument that I really like. What is it? 4 until the first conclusion. So 3, 4, and then, oops. And so we would say conclusion 1 here. So you notice how like I have G as a variable here as one of my sentences, and it shows up multiple times in the premises, and then it shows up again in the conclusion. And we have M here, and I'm saying G and M are both true. And then I'm saying if M and C are true, or I'm saying either M and C are true or M and U is true, right? And I'm showing you with by connecting all these things to each other and showing how they're connected, how we can draw conclusions, right? And so you notice how every time you see any of those letters that represent the different sentences in my argument, you see that they keep showing up over and over again, and it's because all of the premises and the conclusions are connected to each other, and there are lines that we can draw between them that show how we get from one premise or a group of premises to the conclusions. But your premises don't do that. See how yours is just this E, it shows up in the first premise and it never shows up again. T shows up in the second premise and it's nowhere else. Not U is nowhere else. B, also nowhere else. So these things don't exist. So like you're not only do I reject premise 1, and I explained why, I also, not only do I reject premise...
Isn't that special pleading?
No, it's not special pleading, because I'm telling you that the people who wrote... I'm not making rules. I'm not making rules for everything. What I'm doing is telling you how logic works. The reason that I reject premise 1 is because the people who wrote that paper that created this theorem are saying that your view of it is a misunderstanding. Right?
But
so they say...
I read up on said that the theorem was mathematically proven.
Yeah, I know. I understand that. I understand that that's what you read. I'm telling you that the people who came up with this theorem are saying that's a misunderstanding of their theorem, and it's not what the theorem says. So that's why I reject number 1. Number 2, I reject because this is the second law of thermodynamics, and it doesn't apply to the universe for multiple reasons. So I reject number 2. I reject number 3 because this is not how time works. An infinite past is possible. There isn't actually a problem with it. And so I reject that as well. And then the conclusion has nothing to do with the premises, so I have no reason to accept it whatsoever. So on literally every possible ground, I reject your syllogism. I reject each premise, I reject the conclusion, and I reject that the premises are connected to the conclusion.
Host. Let's go through the laws of thermodynamics, okay?
No, the only one that matters is the second law of thermodynamics, and I'll copy and paste it onto the screen right now.
You did use the, I think, was it, what did you use to refute the second law on me?
What I did was what I used was the definition of the second law to refute your use of it. Because this is the definition of the second law of thermodynamics. It states the total entropy or disorder of an isolated system can never decrease over time and is constant only if all processes are reversible. This doesn't apply to the universe because we don't have a reason to think that the universe is an isolated system. Also, even if the universe was an isolated system, physicists will tell you that energy isn't well defined on a cosmic scale, so we can't talk about entropy on a cosmic scale, even if the universe was isolated. So for completely different reasons, there's no reason to think that the second law for 2 different reasons, we have good reason. Oh my God. We have 2 very good reasons to think that the second law of thermodynamics does not apply to the universe.
So, but does it apply to the Earth as it's finite?
No, because the Earth isn't an isolated system.
Oh, okay. I'm going to fine tune up my thingy because I'm reading it right now, and it's saying that it applies both to the universe and Earth, but in different ways. Yeah,
it doesn't. I would recommend that you go. If you have an opportunity to talk to a physicist, I would say to do that. If you don't have an opportunity to talk to a physicist, then I would say to try to find physicists who talk about these kinds of things and see what they have to say about it. Don't take my word for it. I'm not a physicist.
I'm looking at it right now. And
looking at what? What are you looking at?
To the universe, 100%.
What are you looking at?
I'm on Google and I've searched up.
Okay, so Google. Okay, so Google is just giving you, okay, you're probably seeing like the AI overview, right?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So the way that AI overviews work is that they just take a scrub of information from across the internet, and then they just compile that information together and spit that information back at you. So the reason that excuse me, I was still talking. The reason that the AI overview is telling you that is because it scrubbed a bunch of Reddit comments that said that nonsense. It's not because it's true. What you need to do if you want to find out what's actually true in physics is talk to the experts, talk to people who do physics for a living. Not Google, not the AI.
So again, so if you do depth research where you're not just looking at what it says and you're actually telling it for you to refer to sources and all of
Okay,
that.
so find me a
That's still
physicist then.
considered-
Find me a physicist who says that the second law of thermodynamics applies to the universe in the way that you're using it.
Okay, so I'm writing this up. I'm gonna join back. So this is what you want. So first you want me to find a physicist. Sorry if I'm butchering that. That says what?
That agrees with the way you're trying to apply the second law of thermodynamics to the universe.
Okay.
And then what you also need to do is look at the people who disagree with that physicist and see which side actually has better evidence.
Law of thermodynamics. So a physicist that agrees with the second law of thermodynamics.
That agrees with the way you're trying to apply it to the universe.
Okay. With the applying to universe, and then the second one.
I don't know. Learn how syllogisms work, I guess.
Spell that for me.
Syllogism. No problem.
S-I-L.
No, S-Y. S-Y-L-L-O-G-I-S-M.
G-I-S-M.
It's a syllogism.
All right, perfect. It was lovely speaking to you. Ciao, ciao.
All right, have a good one. Philsis. You don't get a lot of those. You don't get a lot of Philsises. Typically, it's just Phil Bros. I think that's like my second Philsis I've ever talked to. Actually, I don't know if she would qualify as a Philsis, not really knowing how a syllogism works, but I agree, Fire Ice Cream. Yeah, exactly, a syllogism. I agree. The easiest way out of this is to stop believing in fantasies. Oh, cripes. All right, well, it is after 10 p.m. here in the Central Time Zone. So I am going to call it for a night. I really appreciate everybody's support. Thank you guys for interacting and for hanging out. Thank you for the people who sent support. I really appreciate that. Lupine and 3 Pips, Lem, Mikey, both sides, everybody. Thank you very much for your support. I sincerely appreciate it. As I always say when I'm ending my lives, remember, tomorrow is not guaranteed. You don't know how many opportunities you have left, to spend time with the people that you love. You don't know how many of those are going to still happen. So take those opportunities when they come. Do not let them go. I think it's extremely important.